You love found footage movies. So do I. So you probably run into the same problem that I do, which is you're always looking for new found footage experiences, whether it's old movies that you didn't know about and haven't seen, or new ones that are coming out. But you, like me, probably run into the issue of not being able to find a place that provides that information very easily, right? Tell me if this sounds familiar to you. You go onto Google, or you go onto YouTube, and you look up something like best found footage movies, or obscure found footage movies, or found footage movies you've never heard of. And, whatever, you find a list of 15, and 12 of them are like movies that you've seen a dozen times. 2 of them are movies that you can't stand or you don't care about. And then 1 of them is like not obscure at all, like Blair Witch or Bad Ben or Paranormal Activity 3 or something like that. And so it gets frustrating because you're like, all I want is a list of new movies to choose from, right? So that's one of the problems. The other problem is that you sometimes will get recommendations and you don't have the same opinions as other people on what is a good or bad found footage movie. That's actually good. There's nothing wrong with liking movies other people don't like or not liking movies other people like, but it does make it harder to get those recommendations. So I'm making this video with this express point of giving you 3 things. The first is a category of places where you can get just a ton of recommendations for found footage films. That's the first category. Second category, it's just one place, but it's a place that you should always be going to find out where you can see these found footage films, because it doesn't do you any good to know about them if you can't find them. And then the last category is the actual places themselves that have the films. So it's not a place that tells you where the films are, it's the place that the films are. So those are your 3 categories. So I'm going to go through them, and hopefully this will help you, like it has me, to be able to put together a list of things you are excited about or want to see or are curious about, something like that, okay? But before we dive in, I want to give you one piece of advice that has made watching, finding, interacting with found footage movies so much better and less frustrating, right? You always want to trust the information, but not necessarily the opinion. What I mean by that is, there are tons of people, like I said, that have very different feelings than you do about found footage movies. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The good thing about people talking about found footage films is it means they bring them to your attention. You're not going to like them all. They're not going to like ones that you like. In fact, there's a great example of movies like August Underground or Megan is Missing. Somebody posts about them, and you can see responses that go everywhere from like, what's the big deal? To scariest movie I've ever seen, to like literally people will be like, anyone who enjoys this film should not be around children, right? So because there is such a vast difference in the way that people respond to these movies, you're never going to find something that's universal. So don't trust the opinion necessarily. If someone likes it, great. If they don't like it, that's fine too. But you don't need to know if they like it or they don't like it. You just need to know that it exists so you can go seek it out for yourself, read a synopsis, watch the trailer, and figure out on your own if it's something that's worth your time. Because that's not always true from person to person. I love Savage Land, some people don't. I love Winners Tape All. Some people have never even heard of it and would walk right by it if they saw the description. So just keep that in mind as you're picking movies. So let's get to this first category. This is places that you can go to find recommendations, tons of recommendations for found footage films, okay? So the first one, if you're not using this app, you should be using it regardless. It's called Letterboxd. Probably a lot of you do use it, but if you don't, what Letterboxd is basically just a place where you can go look up movies, you can log movies, you can do research, you can learn about people, you can search you can search by year, by genre, by actor, by director, all kinds of stuff. And basically, you can turn it into like a watch list of things you want to see. You can log the movies that you have seen. You can make like little diaries talking about what you thought about them. You can rank them, that sort of thing. So it's cool for you to be able to remember what you have seen and what you want to see. But it's also a fantastic place to do research. One of the things I love about Letterboxd is that there's more than one way for you to interact with it to find good found footage films. Now, the first one is they have a whole section just called lists, right? So you can go into the list section and you just type in a term and it'll bring up a bunch of lists that have that term either in the title or in the description, right? Type in found footage, you will find a ton of lists on there. In fact, you'll find one from me. There's a list called Found Footage and Fake Documentary Films, I think. And there's almost 1,900, maybe over 1,900 found footage titles on that one list that I created, right? So that gives you an idea of what's on there. And some of them will be themed, somebody will be like just screen life movies or just different subcategories, found footage, Bigfoot films, whatever. And also, I have a bunch of those too. Not just the 1,900 master list, I've got a bunch of lists based on subcategories. But anyway, you can do that with lists. So you can go and you can find those lists. You can also create your own list if you want to share ones that you like. And then anytime someone says, hey, what's a good found footage movie? Instead of typing manually the 20 films that you think they should watch. You just send them a link to your Letterboxd list, and then they see all the movies that you like. So that's one way Letterboxd is awesome. Another way is that you can find filmmakers who have made found footage films to see if they've made any other ones. So, for example, let's say you watched, I don't know, A Cold Grave, right? And you go and you look at the movie, you see Brendan Rudnicki is the guy who directed it. You click on his name, it'll bring up all the movies he's made, right? And he's made a bunch. He's a friend of mine, so I happen to know this. But he's made a bunch of found footage films, right? So they pull up the list of all the other movies he's made. You can scroll through, see which ones are tagged as found footage, and you can put them on your list and check them out, at least watch the trailer. And that's another thing. That's the other thing you can do is look for the tags. When you go to a movie that you've seen, let's say you saw Savage Land and you really liked it. If you go into that movie, there's a little section where they'll show all the tags that the movie has been tagged as being categorized as found footage, mockumentary, whatever it is. You can click on the tag and that will bring up movies that exist underneath that tag. So other films that have that same tag will also come up in that list, similar to the Internet Movie Database. But the reason I like Letterboxd is because it's easy to navigate, because there's such great interactivity from the people that use it. And like I said, the idea of those lists really is, I think, my favorite thing about it. So anyway, Letterboxd is the first one that you need to know. Second one, I'm not a big proponent of Facebook. I don't really use it all that much. However, Facebook groups can be pretty cool if you find a group that is open, has cool people in it, and talks about something interesting. And there are at least 5 or 6 Facebook groups specifically focused on found footage. If you just look up found footage in groups on Facebook, you will find 5 or 6 of them. I am in one in particular that has 600,000 members, right? Huge. It's by far the biggest of the groups. And there's constant posting in there. People are posting about what they just saw, should they watch this, things that they thought about, a new movie that's going to be coming out, these sort of things. So that is a great place to just stay on top of what's being talked about in the community, found footage, right? And like I said, there's 5 or 6 different groups. You can join all of them. Sometimes people will cross-post in many of them, so you'll see the same comment in a few different places. But it's worth being in them because it just drops stuff into your Facebook feed if you use Facebook. And if you don't use it that much, you can always just go back to the group, scroll through whatever's happened most recently, and look for anything interesting. But that is a really fantastic resource, is the found footage Facebook groups. Another one that I don't see a lot of people talk about is a specific website called Found Footage Critic. Now, the guy who runs that site, he's something of a scholar. He also works with the company POV Horror, who releases found footage films. But Found Footage Critic is basically a website dedicated to listing every single found footage, fake documentary, mockumentary, POV film, basically anything that can fall into the category of what they call in-world camera, being recorded by a camera that is inside of the story that's being told. Anything that falls in that category, there's probably a listing for that movie on this website, Found Footage Critic. You got to check it out. There's links to trailers for basically everything that they can find a trailer for is on there, short blurb. So it's a fantastic resource. And I listed alphabetically, but I think you could also look it up by theme and things like that. But fantastic resource. It's probably the only place I've seen that has anywhere near as many listings as the one that I have on the Letterboxd list. So fantastic resource there. And then the last one that you might not think of, because maybe it's not something that you can do yourself, but it's something you should keep track of, which is the Unnamed Footage Festival. It's a festival that happens in California. It happens in person once a year, and then there's a virtual version of the festival once a year as well. You could go to the virtual version of the festival. You might not be able to go in person to the other one, but the reason it's important to keep track of this festival is because this is where all the new stuff is happening. Most people in the found footage community, especially the filmmakers, know about this festival. They try to enter their films there. I've actually tried to enter films that I have made into the festival. Didn't get in there, got into other ones. But it's a great festival because it's on the cutting edge of anything that's coming out. And it's happening twice a year. So they've got the in-person showings for the festival contest. And then they have, I want to say it's a 24-hour marathon of movies for the other time of the year. They show 24 hours worth of films. And you can basically sign up and then you have virtual access to 24 hours worth of movies. So it's pretty cool. And it's all basically new stuff. Sometimes they'll show like anniversary screenings of famous movies and stuff like that. But by and large, it's mostly new stuff that you haven't heard of. So that's very cool. So those are the 4 places that are really worth always checking out to see what's being recommended. Remember, you're just looking for the information. You don't necessarily have to agree with the opinion, right? But a lot of information to be gleaned there. Now, once you've gotten all that, all those lists of all those movies that you want to see, you got to figure out how you're going to watch them, right? Do me a favor. Don't just go to Google and put in the name and just say streaming or whatever. Because as you know, the AI summary constantly gives you the wrong information. There are websites that are pirate websites, which I really beg you not to use if you can avoid it, because people working in found footage, they're making tiny movies with tiny budgets and they're hoping to just make a little bit of money. So every time you pirate one of their movies, that's a little bit of money that they didn't get from your streaming. Most of these movies are available somewhere, and a lot of times it's a free streaming site, you just have to find it. That is why you want to use Just Watch. Now, you probably know what Just Watch is, but just bear with me for a second. Just Watch is basically an app where you can go put in the title of any movie and it will pull up all of the places that it can be seen streaming online. So we're talking Netflix, Amazon Prime, Fossum, Hulu, Tubi, all of the places, right? It lists them all there. And the cool thing about it is, well, there's a couple of cool things about it. The first is it just tells you everywhere that it's available. It tells you if it's free streaming, it tells you if it's a rental, if it tells you it's theatrical, or if it's just not available at all. So this is a great first place to stop because it tells you where to find it. But the second thing that's cool is you can also, if you start an account here, you can look up the movies, and if it's not streaming anywhere, it's not available yet, or it just hasn't been available for a while, you can put it on a watch list. And then you will be notified when something that you put on your watch list becomes available somewhere. So there's no more issues with you hearing about a movie that you really wanted to see, but oh, it's not going to be out for 4 more months. And then what, are you just going to try and remember for 4 months that you want to see it? Of course not. Put it in this watch list, and as soon as it becomes available somewhere, you will get an email that lets you know. Now, you can do a similar thing with Letterboxd as well. Sometimes Letterboxd will tell you. I don't know if they have as many different platforms covered as Just Watch is. Regardless, Just Watch is free. You can start an account and then basically just put anything you want to see in there and it'll let you know when it's available. And for things that are available, this is super convenient because it tells you all the places that it's listed, right? So let's say there's a movie, you were going to watch it on Fossum, which is ad supported, but it turns out it's also on Amazon Prime, which you're still supporting the filmmaker, but you don't have to sit through ads on Amazon Prime because you already paid for Amazon Prime, right? So this saves you sitting through commercials, but the filmmaker still makes some money off of it, right? So this is a great resource to figure out, where do I see all these movies that I've been hearing about from all those places that recommended them? So that's the second category. And now the third and final category, which is probably the most important, right? You've gotten the recommendations, you have the place that tells you where they're available. What are the sites that are the most likely to have a bunch of found footage movies that you can watch? Because you can also just go straight to these sites and just look up found footage there sometimes. But let's talk about some of them. Now, I'm going to go in order of maybe the way that you've heard of them. So I'll go with the most likely that you've heard of them, and then I'll work my way to the more surprising ones, okay? Obviously, YouTube. No kidding, right? There's a ton of found footage content on YouTube. What I will tell you, though, the reason why we did the first two steps first, the recommendations and the Just Watch, is because if you just go onto YouTube and you put in the term found footage, you are going to get lost in the dark nether regions of YouTube with all kinds of weird crap. Some of it's good. You'll stumble across something like Milk and Cereal by Curry Barker, which is a fantastic hour-long found footage film made for like $800. But just as often, you'll run across the most boring, inane, terrible movie that some guy made in his backyard in a half an hour and just posted on YouTube because anybody can do it, right? So there's the very real possibility, if you're just looking by keyword, you're going to stumble across all kinds of crap you don't care about on YouTube. However, you now have this list of movies. So you can take those titles, go to YouTube and look them up there. Sometimes you're just going to find a trailer, but sometimes there are channels that will have the entire film there, right? So for example, there's like, I can't even remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it's like something horror movies. It's just the name of a channel. They have a bunch of found footage movies. Because here's the thing about found footage. They're easier to license than other movies because they were less expensive, because the filmmakers don't have as many options. So they're willing to have their movies streaming in a ton of places, including on some of these ad revenue based YouTube channels. So you can look them up and you can find places where these movies are going to be available. So just start putting them into a watch list. And then you'll have a whole list of, you just go into YouTube and pull those movies up. Those are all available on there, right? Sometimes they're even available on the actual creator's personal account too. Not just like a streaming site, but their own personal account. The reason I suggest these is because those are places where, again, you're still supporting the filmmaker. They're getting ad revenue from going to the other place, or you're supporting their channel by watching it there. And that's really the key to all of this. The reason that found footage filmmakers can make other movies is because they're supported by people watching their movies legally, so they can make that tiny bit of money back, just enough so they can go make another movie. You know, that's really what they're doing. That's certainly what I do when I make my movies. So that's YouTube. Of course, you know about that one. The next most obvious one, for anybody who loves found footage, if you're not watching Tubi, you gotta watch Tubi. You gotta get a Tubi account. Until very recently, it was probably the place with the most found footage films of anywhere on streaming. It has since been replaced by the one we're going to talk about next. But Tubi is great. It's entirely ad supported, which means you don't pay for an account. You get an account, it's free. Yes, you're going to sit through some ads, but because of that, because of the way Tubi works, unlike with other places like Netflix, Netflix has to pay a license to have a movie on their platform. So it costs them money to have it there for you to watch it. So they're not going to take just any movie, right? And unfortunately, the reality is found footage films aren't looked at as legitimate as other films are. So they often don't make it to the bigger platforms, Apple TV, Netflix, and things like that. They do make it to Tubi often, because on Tubi, it's just ad sharing, it's ad revenue sharing. You sit through a movie, kind of doesn't matter what it is, as long as they can stick ads in it, right? So by you watching a movie there with ads, you're supporting that found footage filmmaker directly. So Tubi, another one that you would know about, like YouTube. Now the next one, this is the one that has surpassed Tubi to have the most found footage movies on a single streaming app in the world. Found TV. Now, you probably have heard of this. Maybe you have a membership to it. The cool thing about Found TV is it's basically like the halfway point between Amazon Prime and Tubi. Meaning, there is a free ad-supported version of it. You can go there, you can watch the movies, and you can have the ads pop up just like they do on Tubi. That's no problem, and you can do that. They also have one where you can get a subscription. It's not very much. I think it's like $5 a month or something like that. It's, like I said, not very expensive, but it removes all of the ads. And they have hundreds of found footage movies. I don't remember what the last count was, but I spoke to the guy who owns and runs Found TV, and he said they officially do now have more found footage titles than Tubi does. Tubi has started to scale back, and Found TV has grown. So that is now the home of the most found footage films anywhere on a streaming service. So Found TV is absolutely one of the places you should be checking. And then the last one that I'll mention, they're not going to have as many as Found TV, but I think this is a great resource, and it's also something important to support, which is Hoopla. Have you ever heard of Hoopla? If you have, you know what this is, you know that it's free. If you don't know what it is, Hoopla is the service where you get free streaming rentals by having a library card. Basically, you get a library card from your local library, you use that card to create a Hoopla account. Then they give you, I don't even know what the number of free rentals is. It depends, I think, on your area. I think I get like between 6 and 8 free rentals a month. It doesn't cost me anything. No ads. All of the films are put there by the filmmakers. They're approved by the library. They get revenue from however it works for the rentals. You know, they make a certain amount of money off of having their films placed there. But the cool thing about it is, like, very few people know about this. Very few people use Hoopla, and really people should, because it doesn't cost anything to get a library card, and it's just like 8 free rentals. But it's 8 free rentals for no ad, there's no ads in it, and you're supporting the filmmakers. It's awesome. So definitely check out Hoopla if you can. So that brings us to the end of the list, right? 3 things. Where do you get your recommendations? I mentioned them again. Letterboxd, Facebook groups, the Unnamed Footage Festival, and Found Footage Critic. Where do you go to find out where those places are, or where those movies are streaming? Just Watch. And then the last thing is, what places can you go that have the most found footage movies? YouTube, Found TV, Hoopla, Tubi. So there you go. You are armed to find the best found footage films. Enjoy the journey.